Go ahead.
Okay. Hey everybody, it's Wine Crush Podcast time again. We just did this the other day. As you can tell, we are not in McMinnville. We are in this beautiful landscape behind us, and this is kind of a direct diversion of what we normally do because you aren't a winemaker.
No, ma'am.
Yeah. So we are sitting here with Jason Wise. We've got just a really nice invitation. If you don't know Jason Wise, if you guys follow SOMM TV, if you've watched the movie SOMM, this is the guy. That's me. Yes. Yeah, so he just happens to be here and agreed to sit down with little old me to talk about all the things. So it's kind of a special little treat. And we have lovely pink rosé wine, which you totally turned the label. We can't even see John's wine. So yeah. John Adams, my audio guy, we have his wine being pretty much pimped out today on the table. This is kind of a introduction to the world with his rosé.
Yeah.
So John is, super special as well.
Trying to make wine for quite a long time, and this is a great example of how good he is at doing it. So it's awesome.
Yeah. No. So okay. So let's talk about you. So typically, I talk about like growing up. Was wine part of your world? Was it part of your world?
Was wine part of my world?
Yeah. Like, did your parents drink it? Did your grandparents drink it? Did you grow up in the wine industry?
Sure. No, not at all. Not even close. No, I'm from the Midwest, from Ohio. And it doesn't mean wine wasn't around-ish, but it was not a part. And I have to say, Cleveland, Ohio is more known for 5-cent beer night at the Browns game than it is known for wine.
Fine wine.
Yeah, it's, not that wine has to be fine at all times, but I did not grow up with a lot of wine. I grew up with wine, but the wine that I was aware of was, my parents would drink a red, or I remember there being white Zinfandel and things around, but I don't remember my parents drinking much wine.
The Behringer Pink. I say that every time because that was my mom's go-to. Was that?
I hope it was as classy as Behringer. I'm hoping it was that spectacular.
Yeah. Well, it's all in the eye of the beholder, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So, how did you get from Cleveland and get to where you're going now? Because you're in California, correct?
That is correct. I should say, just one step back.
Okay.
Ohio is like a massively historical place for wine. So like around the War of 1812 time, the Lake Erie Islands they produced more wine than anywhere else in the U.S. It was a very important place. So there's a place that is now closed called Lanz's Winery on Middle Bass Island in the Lake Erie Islands. And people used to go there and Put in Bay Island and just get trashed. And I mean, I'm telling you, like capital T. And the wine is not great. It was a grape called Catawba, which is a native grape. It's not Vitis vinifera. Anyways, but I did drink that. That I probably should say was around, and especially in my later years, being like 16, 17, you'd get those bottles, and do you count Boons as Boons wine?
Oh, yeah, it's Boons Farm wine.
It clearly says like a malt beverage on the back, but as long as you call that a wine, yes, I grew up with lots of wine.
Okay.
That's what that should
I guess I should probably back up and change my story, too, because I did have the Boons Farm wine. More in college than 16, 17.
I would love to go to that farm.
And the Mad Dog 2020. Does that count as wine too, or is that just complete sludge?
I think Mad Dog 2020 may count more as wine because it is the actual made from grapes. I don't know what beans.
Is it really made from grapes?
I'm pretty sure it is, yeah.
I guess I need to probably search the label because, Mad Dog was cheap and so was Boons Farm. And so that was like every college girl's dream drink,
Was it their dream?
I don't know. It's all we could afford and it's really accessible.
I remember of course, Strawberry Hill Boons, and I remember the green apple Boons Farm, and it was like.
Oh, I never had that.
The color was unholy.
Oh God.
So, anyways, I drank a lot of great wine. That's why I'm here.
Okay, I'm so intrigued by the Ohio because I have a couple, I think wine growers, vineyard growers maybe that are in the Ohio area that kind of follow along with our podcast. So
sure. I'm
actually intrigued by this big of an industry. I had no idea.
Well, it's way pre-Prohibition, 100 years before Prohibition. It was an area that was connected water-wise to other places, and so it made a lot of sense. And, for all intents and purposes, a good place to grow grapes. It's not Napa, it's not Sonoma, it's not here in the land of Oregon or anything like that. But when you're looking at the East Coast, Midwest, it was a fairly good place to do it. It was, they grew tons and tons and tons. It was a very large amount. I would say volume oriented. Cincinnati too. Cincinnati is a really historic wine the Norton grape and all of that was growing a lot there. And these are Vinous Lambrusco and other things. They're not Vinous vinifera. They're different. It's not what we're drinking right now.
Yeah. No, grapes are great.
They're good stuff, though. I mean, honestly, it's not that, a lot of wine can be made very well out of these grapes. Just some people are making it for different reasons, and, But Ohio, and a lot of the Midwest.
I have learned so much about Ohio in the last 3 days that I now need to put it back on my bucket list. Actually, it's never been on my bucket list, but I need to put it on the list of places to visit. Between the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and some of the other things going on in Ohio, I need to not avoid it, I guess would be the thing. And and I know you're an Indians guy and a big Cleveland guy, so
big Cleveland sports. I'm sure your audience is thrilled to find that.
Always loved. Well, Major Leagues was probably one of my favorite movies growing up, and I know that was not the brightest shine on the Cleveland Indians, but it also made them freaking iconic.
Oh my God, it's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, I love it.
Hands down. I could do. If you want to change the whole podcast and just talk about Major League right now?
Oh, we could totally do that because I have watched it 100 times, and my husband will not watch it with me because I can probably quote it word for word.
This is an amazing flex, but I am working on a screenplay that has to do with the wine world with the guy who wrote and directed that movie.
Oh, that's super rad.
True story. He's a good friend of mine, but I mean, aside from that happened when I moved out here, totally coincidental. He is from Cleveland, David Ward, and he basically wrote that movie because he said, if I don't write a film where the then Indians, now Guardians, win the pennant and go on to the World Series, if I don't write it, it's not going to happen. Because it was a very dark time for that baseball team then.
Yep.
David's a good wine guy. He's trying to bring it back to wine here. He really is. He loves wine.
I love it. No, we could totally do a whole thing on baseball and Major League.
Major League is
that'll be part 2 next time you're up here. We'll pivot to that and we'll bring more of John's wine out.
Sounds good.
Okay, so pivoting from Ohio, speaking of pivoting, so how did this, what was your path into what you're doing now? Because that's a windy trail to get from Cleveland, Ohio, drinking Boons Farm, to SOMM TV and all the amazing things that you're doing with that.
I think when my whole thing started with trying to be a filmmaker. Really, really desperately, deeply, passionately wanting to make a film. And not just any film, but a film that, I had a number of films I was trying to make. I love history. I was trying to make something about, I love horror films, and I love history, and I love this stuff. So I'm like, I'm going to make a film about World War I, and all of these things in World War I, a lot of it took place in Champaign, frankly. So when I first started writing the screenplay, this is even before going to film school, it was just me landing on what I wanted to do with my life. I started researching where World War I was fought. And the Battle of the Somme and all these places are right in Champaign country. Just trenches driven right through some of the most incredible wine-producing places in Europe. And so I started learning a little bit about Champagne and this and that, and go to film school, and I got a job bartending across the street from my film school in Southern California, Chapman University. So I was between going to New York or going to California at that time, which, one of those places for film school. I ended up at Chapman University in Southern California, and I bartending, and they have a great wine list. And so it was, I had served at restaurants in Cleveland and sold mostly Napa wine, but I didn't really know much about it. It wasn't like they were, bringing wine out for us to taste. I just knew if I sold an expensive bottle, I got a better tip. That was my whole thing. But when I moved to California, people were coming in and trying to sell the restaurant with samples. They were coming in and going, I'm a rep for this company. I am, working for Trefethen, and I'm working for Rombauer, and all of these, Silver Oak, and you name it. And this was at a time when a lot of these wines were pretty affordable and kind of, it wasn't like Napa is now. It's amazing how much has changed in 20-some years. But, I got to taste all of these things. Mostly Napa, but a lot of French stuff too, and Italian stuff, just through people coming in. And I learned this incredible lesson. Wine reps are desperately trying to get rid of wine. And so what they want is some wine reps want their wine to be your by the glass. And so we didn't have a beverage director. It was myself and another woman I bartended with who was from Eastern Europe and did quite a bit about wine. It was a great cocktail maker. And her and I devised this thing where if somebody was trying to get rid of wine, right, we would say, okay, we'll pour your Sauvignon Blanc by the glass, right, because they were just trying to get rid of 10, 15, 20 cases of wine. And we'd say, but we want a case of it, and that we can have for us. And they go, no problem, fine. It was like always. So we go to the owner of this place, and Mondays were dead, absolutely dead. And the professors at Chapman University were some of the greatest screenwriters, directors. I mean, the guy who made Saturday Night Fever, the guy who made Major League, the guy who made tons of these like mini series on ABC and NBC in the 80s and 90s, and just people who work with Spielberg. And the guy who did special effects for Blade Runner. These were our teachers.
Wow.
I mean, incredible stuff.
That's a hell of a resume.
So I'm over at Chapman University, and I'm saying to myself, look, Mondays are dead. It's my bartending day. So I start telling all the professors, you come into this place in the evening on Monday, a couple glasses of wine for free. Just come in, knowing they're going to eat. So I talked to the owner of the restaurant. I said, look, if I pour these guys and the wine doesn't cost you anything, we got this case for free, I can fill this bar up. He's like, good luck. And Mondays became the most impossible. The bar was, you couldn't get a seat for 2 years at this bar. And all we did was pour cheap ass, by the glass, white or red wine that we got for free from reps. That was like, because back then I think it's different. People would come into my restaurant and go, I want a glass of red wine. They wasn't like, I want a Chardonnay. They would just be like, white wine, red wine, so we could pour anything. And so when we would pour these wines, and it turned into an incredible experience for me. And I learned a lot about wine, but I learned how wine can be used as a currency almost. And so what happened for me, I didn't have to wait in line to rent cameras at school. I didn't have to, it was an incredible, I kind of likened it to like the guy in prison who can get you things.
Yeah.
But all I was doing was pouring Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand that somebody was trying to offload.
The Shawshank guy.
It taught me a lot.
Yeah.
I started dating this young woman who was just insanely hot, beautiful girl in film school, who was amazingly pursuing me because I had my head down trying to make films. And so she asked me out. She asked me out. She's now my wife. We have 2 kids. But I meet her father. I fall deeply in love with this woman. I meet her father, and her father is obsessed with wine. Has a wine cellar. It's converted part of the garage with climate control and all this stuff. And this is when I took the leap from wine as a tool for me to make films and meet people and do this stuff to wine is a chance for me to have something I want in life, which is this person. I want to marry this woman. And so I found myself really getting into wine so that I could sit across from her father, who is a very intelligent, very well-traveled, ex-military, guy you always have to be on your toes around, but really smart guy. So I'm like, if I could, the wine might be the key in, because I don't know how to talk to him about military at this point. I've traveled a lot, but it's not like he has. And so wine gave me this platform to become a very good friend of his, and I have to say I would not have made my first film, SOMM. I'm not sure I wouldn't have made it, but I certainly wouldn't have pushed myself as hard. It was a brutal film to make, and I wouldn't have gone so hard at it had I not had the incentive of impressing my future wife's dad, with my wine knowledge. And so I'll never forget when it went from like, oh, it's cute, about wine, to, oh my God, how did you get us into this winery in Australia when we were visiting? It was a great turning point, and I would recommend anybody who's trying to date somebody whose father likes wine, learn about wine. It works.
That's actually really, really good advice for so many different reasons. But I love the fact that you are using wine as a commodity for something else. Because I've always said that wine is kind of a catalyst for stories that maybe aren't usually told. Wine is different in the fact that the things that you talk about are different when you're drinking a bottle of wine versus a beer or a cocktail or whatever. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. Beer makes me tired, so maybe I'm just not very conversational after I've had a beer or two. I'm ready for a nap. But wine can be so much more than just this lovely beverage that is in a glass that you swirl, you sniff, and you pair with a sandwich.
Yeah, I mean it's good with sandwiches though.
That has been kind of my new guilty pleasure, is to talk about guilty pleasures with wine. Like, my thing with wine was so standoffish for so many years. I only got into wine because I could use it through business.
Why? Because you thought it was like snooty, or what?
I thought it was really snooty, and I thought, this is actually a good conversation with you, because I've always said that I feel like Hollywood has put wine up on this pedestal.
You think Hollywood's done that?
Well, and that's just my take, because I'm a little podunk cow, dairy girl from Tillamook that doesn't know any better other than to watch movies and go, everybody in these movies are rich and they're at parties and they're, it's not somebody in a pair of jeans and a pair of tennis shoes out on a back deck having a glass of wine that's being portrayed. It's these kind of elitist kind of images.
Like what movies? Like what?
I can't even give you a good movie at this point. Put me on the spot. Let's talk about Major League.
Well, Major League, there's great wine scenes.
There's champagne.
Yeah,
there's
champagne. There's
fine dining and wine with Tom Berenger.
Yeah, that's right.
So dreamy at the time.
That's right. Sadly, I was filming in Milwaukee. Cleveland, but that is I dissected that scene on a podcast once. It's anywho.
So to me, that's for me what was very standoffish about wine is because I just thought I had to have money and I had to be doing something special to be able to open a bottle of wine. So I just never did it. Sure. I just drank beer and cheap beer for that matter. So, but now that I've gotten into this and wine has come to me through business, it's interesting to hear another take on it and why you got into it. And so and my whole vision on wine has changed. And my husband, being a contractor and a dirt guy, was very, very anti-wine because that's not the blue collar thing to drink. But now he drinks it all the time and he gets it.
I've watched this in real time with the people I love in my life. My stepdad, he's always was a beer guy. The whole family, cops and firemen, and I've seen him become an incredibly knowledgeable person about wine. I don't think he was ever against wine, but I've watched him go from being I drink this kind of beer to at night I'll have a glass of wine, and he knows what he likes and he knows how he likes it. And he knows, and I've seen that across the spectrum. It has become a much more vernacular drink than it was. It's not like this thing that's I don't know about. See, I always thought the cocktail thing, martinis and all that, was a little, like the snooty thing from movies. But the wine thing, from my perspective, movies always just F it up. They mess up the wine so badly often that I just think it's hilarious. I mean, I think it's like the wine in movies to me is I would assume what it's like if you're a surgeon and you watch like a medical drama. Like that is just not how it's done. Yeah. And so I spend a lot of my time watching these movies going, you gotta be kidding me. The sommelier profession is the most hilarious thing when you see it in a movie. You're like, what in the hell? It's like their only knowledge of what it is watching my ridiculous first film and I guess maybe a Parks and Rec episode or something. I'm like, what in the world is happening here? But anywho, I think wine is one of these things that if you go to Europe, and that's another thing too. Traveling to Europe when I in my early 20s and seeing like wine just be part of like lunch. And not be a thing, not be
free on the
over.
Table.
Oh yeah, no, I mean that is a huge thing that formed my like. This is really not, it's not such a big, it's not a holy relic. It's not a big deal. Mm-hmm. Obviously, for me, if I'm drinking something old and of value, I think about kind of all the things it had to survive to get to my glass. Mm-hmm. So I have a reverence for it in that fashion, but not really that like, ooh, this is worth $1,000.
Yeah.
Or, I don't. In fact, when a wine's worth a lot of money, I just don't. I give a lot less of a crap about it, and it's not. It's more of just like I think it's easier to be worth money than it is to have a story. You know what I'm saying? Like,
100%.
Wine is a perfect example of a thing in the world where you're just like, oh, cool. Its main thing is that it's worth money. Cool, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not interesting.
Yeah. And I can't say that I have drank a lot of like really old or very, very, very expensive wine, but when I've had some of those things, I'm like, gosh, I don't know if I really am enjoying the $1,000 that this bottle was worth.
Well, it depends on if you paid for it.
That's a huge difference. Not paid for it. I am too big of a cheapskate to pay that much for a bottle of wine. Like, I will openly admit that. Total cheap ass when it comes to that. And it's why I drank beer for as long as I did, because I'm like, one thing of wine for $20 or $30, or a whole 30 pack of Coors Light for $20. Like, so.
You sound just like my grandma. I love it. You say the same thing. 30 pack of Coors Light.
Yeah. I don't even drink it anymore, but if I'm going to drink beer, it's going to be a good IPA or something like that. Yeah. Okay. Coors Light is out of my realm.
See, and I think I'm going to come in with a hot take. I think the IPA culture is way more snooty than the wine culture.
It's super snooty. Yeah, it can be super snooty, and it's funny because my husband has gone from
triple creamsicle. Hop burger.
Imperial, blah blah blah.
Yeah. Like, these hops were fermented and buried in the backyard in a pine cone. Encrusted pot. You're just like, get the fuck. I mean, it's like so stupid. I don't know. It's fine. I like all those beers a lot, but it's like I'm fishing right now. Why are we talking about this?
I totally get it. And it's just I
feel the same way about wine. So like when I'm such a hypocrite. People listening to this have to be like, this is the guy who made SOMM, where people just gush over esoteric, ridiculous terms and be like, this tastes like tomato leaves, and I smell But that being said, I know I'm a hypocrite, so it's
It's okay. It's totally okay. Yeah, because I mean, you watched that movie. I just watched it the other night, and I'm just like, it is just insane to me to have the kind of palette that you can pick up those nuances. And I watched the Frasier episode years ago, before I ever really started drinking wine, where they were, I think they were looking to be the cork master for this wine club in Seattle, Frasier and his brother Niles or whatever. And they were like trying to identify these wines. I'm like, that is such bullshit. That is not even remotely possible. And then I watched your movie and I'm like, oh fuck. Yeah, there are people that can actually do that shit.
Yeah, there are, but most of them, I'm not sure, I have different opinions on what I'm about to say, but most of them will say that's a learned, it's a learned thing.
Yeah.
But it's also a learned thing in the way that like somebody can learn to play violin, but certain people can be very good at violin. I'm not equating wine tasting with,
violin playing
a Stradivarius or something like that. I'm just saying it's like there is an element of learning, nature, nurture kind of thing. But some people are just, they can hear the music, and some people can write the music, and some people can just look at it and see marks on a page.
Yeah.
And so some of the people, especially in that film, are incredible at hearing the music. And I think it's what people miss about the blind tasting thing is it's not what is it, it's what it isn't. So you're deductively, you're checking off what it's not. You're like, well, it doesn't have this characteristic, so I'm going to push that out of the way. It doesn't have this. And by the time you get to what it is, you go, well, it's either a Chenin Blanc or it's an Albarino. And you go, well, does it have this kind of oceanic, salty type thing, or does it have this blah, blah, blah? And if it doesn't, then you go, I have to hedge my bets on it being Chenin from the Loire. And so it's really deductive. And it's similar to like, my daughter and I play this game called the Animal Game all the time. And this game is like, I'm thinking of an animal, and you can ask questions. You go, well, does it have fur? No. Okay. Does it live in the water? No. Does it live in the trees? And by the time you get to a place, you're like, well, it's an armadillo. But you're deductively figuring out that this animal is not it's not a meal.
Yeah.
So wine tasting is very similar, just without, the auditory part. It's just sort of in your head. But what made SOMM so fun is there's a lot of shit talking, and there's a lot of people screwing with each other. And, I look at it more, it is much more a film about guys being guys than it is a wine film. Personally, I would say that's...
Yeah, I can see where,
my first film I ever made, so
yeah.
Trust me, I've said this before and I'll get in trouble for saying it again, but like making a film is like having sex, right? So the first time you do it, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this. And, and then like you get to do it again and you can't believe you're like, I'm doing it again. And then by the third time, you're like, I should probably get better at this.
Yeah.
I should probably stop, try to not be, not just be surprised I'm doing it and try to figure out how to be good at it at this point. So, SOMM is, I'm so proud of it, but it was my first movie.
So, I mean, are you like thinking that like SOMM 2 and SOMM 3, because there's 3 of them, right?
There's 4.
There's 4 of them.
So Cup of Salvation came out little,
that wasn't too long ago, actually.
It was a year and a half ago, does that sound right? Somewhere in there. Maybe 2 years, I can't remember. It was in theaters in New York, LA, and a bunch of other places.
Yeah.
I'm insanely proud of this film, but it's also a very different kind of movie than the other ones. Have you seen it yet?
I haven't.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't.
Let me pitch you.
I'm going
to pitch you.
Okay, I want to hear it. Yeah.
So,
hit me with it.
This is a film I set out to make a film about the origin of wine and religion. And I'm not saying this to sound like highfalutin or snooty or something, but wine really does have a very important place in human history. So as humans moved around, the stuff we carried defines us more than the fact that we moved around. It's kind of what did we bring with us? And so as human culture moved from, the Rift Valley in Africa or the Caucasus Mountains over here in Eurasia and Anatolian Plateau here and, Mesoamerica. So there's these places in the Yellow River Valley in China, and they all sort of spread from these places into other places. But what they brought is the fascinating thing. They brought copper, or they brought iron, but they always brought wine if they were around this grape, because you could make cuttings, you could bring it. It was kind of like this. And along the way, this dead branch that they would bring with them, they'd put in the ground, it would come back, and these stories of resurrection that go from most religions, going all the way back to the Sumerians and the Babylonians and all this Epic of Gilgamesh and amazing stuff. So wine has been this really important thing that humans have brought with them for different reasons, religion or water purification or just getting drunk around the fire and going, Isn't this fun? I mean, it's so many reasons. So I wanted to set out and make a film that was kind of about humanity's relationship to wine, mostly from a religion, you know, how religion and wine sort of intertwined and owe each other a big hug, that they still exist. And I look at the way birds, when they pick up a seed and fly and they drop part of that seed or they drop some of the fruit, that plant travels a little bit further and it spreads. Well, humans were like that for grapes. Vitis vinifera, this thing we're drinking right now, tricked us enormously because it did everything it could to appease us and say, look how delicious I am. You discovered that I can be alcoholic, and that's fun. But all of a sudden, you put a bunch of monks in a place with nothing else to do for a long time besides pray. Then they figured out how to go, this grape tastes better than the other one. And this fermentation tastes better. Same with beer. And so I think that what it did was it just, right place, right time, but really appealed to all of our senses. And so we took it with us, and it became, I mean, it's a literal representation of Christ's blood. Whether you believe in any of that stuff doesn't matter. It really impacted humanity. So I set out to make this film that kind of showed a beverage going from something, you know, discovered to be something interesting to sacred to, and it goes all the way to being a commodity. Now, you can go to any liquor store, corner store, and you can find this thing that at one point was the most precious thing you could have. You'd have a skin of it in your back, on your back, and it would be the most important thing you carried with you because you couldn't drink the water we were going if you didn't mix it with it. And so that charting that course. So anyways, we were filming that film. I got permission to film the Vatican for a long time. I filmed at Mount Vesuvius and Pompeii, all these crazy things. Get to Armenia, where the first winery, known winery, is discovered. And it was just discovered right before we filmed there. We're the first people to film, and it's this incredible Neolithic cave with these, you know, amphora and human remains in there, and they were sacrificing people and making wine.
Yowza.
So anyways, we're there, and Armenia goes to war with their neighboring country, Azerbaijan, and we got stuck in the middle of a war, and then we found a way to sneak into Iran and make the first Persian wine since the Islamic Revolution in '79. And very dangerous movie, geopolitical thriller type of thing. And so this movie it became something different. And so now we are making that other film right now with all the pieces that we had filmed because we had to take a different path on that. That was a very long, meandering
pitch.
Well, I don't know if it was a pitch. I didn't refine that. It was more of a I've had 2 glasses of rosé. But you know, to me, this stuff does have it. It's important to separate the it's got a greater meaning from the you have to know that to enjoy wine. You don't have to. Yeah. But if you want to, I mean, I kind of look at it as you know, if you're a college football fan, you don't have to know, you know, what an edge rusher and a pass rusher and all these people do, and you don't have to know what the defensive coordinator truly does. But if you wanted to, you could go so deep into college football. I find wine to be one of these things that if you wanted to just spend years on the chemistry, you could go so deep. And it's so wonderful and incredible. The microbiology, the farming aspects. I mean, I went on this tangent one time where I was looking at predatory mites in the vineyards that people release to get rid of pests. It's so phenomenally interesting, but the problem with wine is you have to always remember, especially for me as a filmmaker who's trying to get people to watch the crap I'm making, is you have to remember that it has to be commercial. It has to be something people watch on their off time and not just when they're studying or something like that. So, but wine is important. It's a wildly deep and important thing. And so, you know, every once in a while it gets this boom, like NBA players love it now. Yeah. You know, and that's really cool and great, but that'll go away. Yeah. And then something else will happen. It's like the truth is wine has found a way to be relevant through the most extraordinarily strange times you can imagine. War, religion, sports, and that's how I look at it. I look at it as this strange day player that can kind of come in and out of all these different stories, and that's where I am to sort of collect them, you know?
Is that kind of, I mean, as you've done this, I guess, over the years, how long have you been doing this now?
15, 20 years.
Yeah, so you've seen a lot of things.
Yeah, and I shot travel shows before that.
Drank a lot of wines, things like that.
Sure.
So, I mean, with all of this, I mean, was your depth and interest that deep from the beginning, or has it gotten deeper and more prolific, I guess, as you've gone on, and then that's where SOMM TV came from? Or where, I mean, that's a really broad, roundabout question. Sure.
I mean, SOMM TV, we created this thing. You know, SOMM 1, SOMM 2, and SOMM 3, and a number of other films I made that are not about wine, ended up on things like Netflix and Hulu and all of the earlier streaming services. Now we've got 1 billion of them. And I kind of was getting frustrated with those places telling me what it's worth. Because they'll give you a dollar amount, and they take your films or your series or whatever for X amount of years. Doesn't matter how many people watch it. And it's really great because it gets a wide audience, but you don't make any money.
Yeah.
And these films are, it's not that we make stuff for small budgets, but they take a long time. So it's really hard to equate what the budget is. And often my crew and I, we do not pay ourselves. If we do, we don't pay ourselves well. And it's a very tricky thing to figure that out. And so when they would come and say, here's a dollar amount, we'd kind of go, God, I think it's worth more. And I think there's a bigger audience. And the algorithm has changed the way people watch stuff, and I definitely think not in a good way. Unless you want stuff curated for you, that's fine. But for me, I was like, we're hiding behind a documentary genre, and then once you're in there, then we're in the food genre. Once you're in there, you got to get past Top Chef, and it's like, wouldn't it be interesting if there was a place where our audience could go and find an equal part of education, entertainment, and also some wild card stuff that we're just trying to see if it works. And so that's where SOMM TV came about, which I still think is the most insane thing we've ever attempted to do. It's the hardest, most frustrating, most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life besides have kids. And it is it's a very wild process to do this, but and every day, right now, as I when we wrap this, I'm struggling immensely and also being successful with this platform. I should figure out how we measure success, but it's a weird process. So we started that, and it's a streaming service available all over the world on almost every device, and we've got I don't know, 500-600 hours worth of content, thousands of episodes.
There's quite a bit, and as you kind of scroll through it and look at different things, there's a little bit of everything. There's like the kind of more biography stories of like the different winemakers. The Napa stuff. The one I just watched the other day was the Ghost of Napa.
Oh, did you watch that?
I did.
What did you think of that?
I thought it was great.
Oh, great.
For so many different reasons. The whole
Ghost of Napa Valley. Yeah. It's feature film on SOMM TV right now.
Yeah, no, I thought it was really great. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the history. I enjoyed the kind of the paranormal, I guess, twist and whatever with it. I found it super interesting. I enjoyed all of it. I actually sat still for the whole thing and watched the whole thing. And for me to sit still for that long, that's why I don't watch a lot of TV. And I listen to things in the background, and so I don't sit down and watch the SOMM movies and other movies and things that I want to, because I am a fart in a skillet, and the ADD kicks in, and I'm like, and what do we do next? And
I know how you feel. I can't do the dishes without a podcast. But that Ghost of Napa Valley is a perfect example of kind of the way my brain and my team's brain works. Is that we're up in Napa. We're always trying to film 2 or 3 things at once. I don't like to sit still. But with this one, the thought is there's all these old buildings, there's all these stories of them being haunted, and I love films, and one of the film genres that's an unwritten genre is kind of a hangout film that I love. Movies where people are put in a place and they hang out with each other, they have a task, but for the most part they're like together, and you want to be with them. And I look at like The Big Chill like this, I look at Breakfast Club, and I just thought, I adore the women that are in this film. Shakira, Claire Copey, Megan Zobek. Megan Zobek is now the head winemaker at Opus One. A very accomplished person who was on Sparklers. They were all on Sparklers. Most of them were on Sparklers.
That's probably why they look familiar to me. I'm not very good at remembering names all the time, but definitely good at remembering faces. And I'm like, gosh, those girls look familiar. And it's because I did watch Sparklers.
I thought, how fun would it be to put these 3 people in a place that was scary and unnerving, but also interesting and had history, and it was one of these movies that I just thought no one else was going to try to make. I didn't. So I had to see if it was going to be any good. It'll go to other streaming platforms.
I dug it. So not that I mean much of anybody to anything, but I enjoyed it, and I'm super picky when it comes to movies. Like, if I'm not in it within the first probably 5 minutes, I'm out. And I won't go back to it just because there's a gazillion things out there to watch. Like, I struggle with streaming platforms because I get so overwhelmed by choices, and I have a tendency to go back to things I've already watched.
Well, I rewatch stuff all the time. It drives my wife crazy. But
it's because I can listen to it and know what's happening. So I can do my busyness, listen to it, and know what's going on, and I don't have to see it to be able to visualize it. If that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah. Well, that means a lot. I mean, that's a perfect example of kind of the wild swings we are trying to take at different content. I mean, we have a huge thing coming about the Judgment of Paris, which is the 50th anniversary next year, and that story has never been told properly. I mean,
is that the Oregon versus?
No, that's well, it was California, I guess, but American wine versus France.
Okay.
In '76, but it's a total bullshit thing.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't understand how much bullshit is involved in this story, and I mean that in an interesting and actually really affectionate way. I don't mean that it's like not true or anything. I just mean that the story has not been told. You know, you can watch Bottle Shock, which is a hilarious, ridiculous movie. It's about as historically accurate as Michael Bay's Pearl Harbor, if you want to. Well, like it is a really fascinating tale that is better in retrospect than it actually was, as far as like the truth goes. And so we interviewed everybody. I mean, everybody. I mean, Steven Spurrier passed away. The guy, one of the people who put on the exam, the competition, the tasting, whatever you call it.
That's whatever it is, yeah.
He passed away a couple years ago. We were filming with him for years on this. Patricia Gallagher. None of the women behind this have ever gotten any credit, and so it's going to be a great thing that's coming next year for the 50th. And you know, we've got that. We've got this other thing I was telling you about, the wine and religion thing, which is coming. It's really timely too with the picking a new pope, because we filmed quite a bit in the Vatican. But anyways, it's my thought is, you know, how can you marry all of these different topics, from pop culture to sports to, in the case of ghosts and haunted places, with wine? I mean, because I think that, like, you know, wine's a canvas. We're trying to figure out how to draw all the way to the borders, all the way to the edge of the canvas, see what we can get.
Well, there's just so many different ways to go with wine as well. And I mean, not only are you looking at just like the different varietals and the sub-varietals of it, but then you're also looking at the different regions and how they look at wine, how they treat wine. And are you, you know, I mean, even just like the whole controversy with Chardonnay. Like I hear it all the time with winemakers, you know, in Oregon, you know, people come into their, you know, whatever, their tasting rooms and like anything but Chardonnay.
Yeah, I've heard this. I've heard a similar thing.
And
it doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
And Riesling as well. Like, no Riesling.
That's a mistake. Yeah.
Huge mistake.
Yeah, both
Riesling's
of those are a mistake.
I mean, I can understand. I mean, California, you know, style of wine, Chardonnay is completely different than, you know, the Chablis or, you know, the
yeah. There are some people that make a very, you know, in a linear style that's kind of similar to that. But.
Yeah. So it's always interesting, and that was another one of my big pushbacks with wine is I just didn't get it. Like going in and hearing tasting notes, I'm just like, I'll taste strawberry and tobacco and that, I'm out. You know, hand me a beer. Like I could be a beer snob easier than I could be a wine snob because I have a better palate for beer. Maybe it's better trained. I don't know. But I don't know. Wine is just so vast with everything, and the more I've gotten into this. And watching SOMM TV it's been interesting for me because I'm seeing it also from a different perspective and different pieces and places around the world and that perspective, and so I can appreciate it that much more.
I mean, that sounds great. I wish everybody had that kind of thing. I just think that wine is, you just have to go to like southern Spain once in your life to just sort of see people treat wine like, what do you want? Water? You want beer? You want some juice? You want wine? It's not a big deal. It's just something on the table, which I think is really important. Wine can be a luxury product. It can be something that represents an investment. It can be so many different things. It does not have to be all of those at once. And I don't know. You're going to find people that treat a thing like that in any profession. It's unfortunate wine has this thing, but there are a lot of people that are obnoxious in wine. There are a lot more that are not, in my opinion.
I have found, and this is no offense to anybody who has considered themselves a wine snob, yes please, a wine snob by any means, but I find that the obnoxiousness, I guess, with wine is more the drinker and not the maker or the grower. And I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I feel like there's a lot more opinions and more arguments and more snootery that comes with more of like the wine drinker than there is the winemaker. Most winemakers are like, if you like it, great. If you don't, move on. There's going to be something for you. And granted, I'm mostly in Willamette Valley. I'm not in other places.
No, I think that's universal. I really do. I think, even in Bordeaux and Napa, which are two of the places where, I don't want to say they're buttoned up, but in a lot of cases, those regions have to be, they're careful with their messaging and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. They're some of the most humble. Look, if you're a farmer at all, I don't even care if you're like if you are peripherally a farmer, if the weather is dictating what you have to sell and what your day is going to be like, you're going to be humbled pretty quick. It may take a couple of years, but you're going to be humble.
Mother Nature doesn't pull punches. She just is who she is.
Yeah, I mean, but also the places where wine is grown are pretty consistent and they're right to do it. So I don't know. From a pretension standpoint, it seems very strange that wine is been with us forever. Mm-hmm. I mean, it goes. There's so many things. Like I don't know if you work in heating and cooling. That's a brand new invention. You know, wine has been around forever and ever and ever. So I think people should be much more snobby about heating and cooling than they are about wine. Wine's been around forever. It just makes no sense.
Essential in comfort.
I'm just saying, it's like a profession that people are making wine. I mean, Herodotus is writing about, the Armenians making wine. It's not like the ancient Greeks talk about wine like it's sex. I mean, it's been around forever. It's not a new thing. So for people to be like, this malolactic fermentation and this, it's like, okay, great, but it's not new. None of this is new.
Yeah.
It's not.
I was blown away. I lived in Europe for a while, mostly in my younger 20s or whatever, and it was more beer and cocktails at that point in time because you're out partying and clubbing. But took my only time in my life I've ever clubbed was when I lived in England.
You don't have to lie to me.
Yeah, no, I'm such a homebody and a fuddy-duddy. I'm not any fun. But we were in Barcelona several years ago. It was my husband's first visit to Europe ever. And it was right when I was really starting to get into the wine, and we went to a cava winery outside of Barcelona, and had been around since I think it said 1592 on the door. And he's like, that's the year? And I'm like, pretty sure that was the year that it was built. I mean, hand-dug tunnels. I mean, it was insane. And I told him as we were going through this tour, I'm like, I'm taking home the best bottle of cava that they have, and it was award-winning and whatever else. $11. About shit myself. I'm like, I'll take 4, please. Because all they would allow us to have is 2 bottles each. But I'm like, I will take 4, and I'm out of here for less than $50. Cost me more than that to get home, but kind of overweighted my luggage just a hair. But I guess to me it was just mind blowing. Like, how can you have this award-winning international blah 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 wine and it's $11?
Well,
it's insane.
Do you want me to answer that, or
yes, please?
Well, I mean, it's just we tax the hell out of stuff here for one, and for two, we don't have the history.
Yeah.
It's not ubiquitous here. Wine is like this thing that's like, oh, have you been to this tasting room? And it's put up on a pedestal here. Mm-hmm. That's not. I'm not saying all of Europe, but if you're in a place like Cava Country, or in Galicia, Spain, in the Northwest, or Rioja, or any of these places where wine is sort of part of the daily life and it's not like such a big deal, and they're happy to sell you an expensive bottle, but for the most part, I think it comes down to just we're too young. We just don't get it. It's just a natural progression. Plus, this is not a political statement. I'm not trying to, but free market economy, we're trying to make a ton of money off of things, or land is really expensive here.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So, and it's just it's apples and cantaloupes, when you're looking at prices, which is, I'm not going to avoid political conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Might make
not
me
going to do it.
a little bit in my chair if we get to it. I cannot hang.
Yeah,
I can hang on the sports talks, but political, I don't know.
I'm going clubbing after this. I want to be in a good mood.
Okay.
So.
Okay, great. Okay.
Club Aqua is where I'm going.
Okay, let's talk Willamette just a little bit. You've been all over the world. That has to be an inside joke, and I'm not asking.
No, my friend John built the deck behind Club Aqua.
Okay.
It's a club he loves. Anyways,
okay, let's talk Willamette really quick.
Yeah.
You've been all over the world.
Uh-huh.
Willamette was ranked number 1 on places to visit by whoever not too long ago. So I have no idea. It was like a top 10 list of places in the world to visit.
Many people are saying.
Yes, many people are saying Willamette should be visited.
Sure.
Because I don't think people realize really how special it is up here.
Yeah.
So you've been all over the world. You've seen a lot of different places. What does make Willamette different and special?
What makes it different and special?
Mm-hmm.
First of all, the wines are outrageous. They're very good. I mean, that's one thing. It's kind of still got that wonderful quality of not being like trampled underfoot, to quote a Zeppelin song, by too many people.
Yeah.
It's just there was a moment where Napa, and I was a part of the very end of the Comet Tail before Napa, and I say this with apologies, but before Napa became a bit of Vegas Strip mentality, where the 29 just has these giant wineries across. And you know, this is a place that kind of has this discovery written all over it. You can still discover stuff. You can be here 40 times. You still find a new winemaker. People are trying interesting and weird and really genuine things here, and that is incredibly important. I mean, you can find bottles of Pinot and Chardonnay that taste like Burgundy for real. I mean, I'm not, that's thrown around a lot here, but it really is true. But you can also, and those can be hundreds of dollars, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is up to you guys who live here. But you can also find wines that are, you know, I'm drinking this Wild Sound Wine Rosé, which is a really affordable, insanely well-made, handmade thing. And you can find that here, and I'm telling you, that's what makes it special. That it is still in a phase where it's experimenting in a way that's not to find what it's doing. It's experimenting in a way because it's really passionate, and it's trying to do better stuff. And so a lot of regions, they have gone, okay, Pinot Noir makes money, we're going to buckle down, and I'm calling you out, San Ynez Valley and Santa Barbara, where you go, look, this is what we're doing, and we're going to do it because it makes money, and that's rightfully so, by the way. But it's also, when you go to 7 wineries in 2 days and you taste, you're like, okay, the variance in the wines is starting to constrict. They're not that different from each other anymore. But up here, you have this thing where you go, you know, somebody here is trying to do something with Riesling, and somebody here is trying to do something with Pinot, and somebody here is trying 3 other different grapes that are white that I never thought they could grow here. And then you have 4 or 5 people who are doing Pinot, and they are throwing the rules out with how their neighbor's doing it. And that's fascinating, and they're all good. You know, it's not. So for me, I like it that people are passionate and doing great stuff still.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping it stays that way. I really am. There's a lot of big brands that are buying stuff up here, and that's good. I guess it's progress, but it's also going to change it. You know, I don't want to. I'm trying not to offend anybody, but also that's what excites me is that I can still drink this bottle of rosé made by a husband and wife team that is delicious, and there's many more of them out here like this.
I would say there's a lot of micro producers out here that are like John and Meg that have Wild Sound that are producing world-class wine, and they're just these little hidden gems that you have to discover.
See, for me, that's where wine pretension gets confused. Is you find like a wine critic who talks in a certain fashion, and they are very self-important, and they think because they've experienced and drank a lot of stuff, the only thing that they know more about wine is the fact that they've tasted more and been around it more. And so an interesting thing about coming up here is wine, the discovery of different wines is what made me fall in love with this. Going, I have never tasted anything like this. You know, I was 12 miles away from this yesterday. This is completely different and completely interesting. And here's somebody who came here for such an interesting reason, blah, 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 blah. I think that exists here. And anybody who comes up here, you have to work to find these wines, and that's how it's supposed to be. It is not supposed to be, well, all right, look, I'm being a jerk here, but like you get a pamphlet and you go, okay, I'm going to visit Manabi, I'm going to visit, you know, Trefethen, I'm going to visit this, I'm going to visit that, and you've got your, you know, your 10 wineries and your that you go to, and that's fine. But here it's like, if you really want to do it, you have to actually do a little work. You got to research, you got to figure it out, and then you also have to keep things open and go, I had no idea I was going to be here this afternoon. And this is still a place you can do that. You can get off the beaten path, you can go on tangents, you can go places that are fascinating. There's a reason a lot of, you know, I know you had Channing Frye on your podcast, I don't know when this is airing, but you know, him and CJ McCollum and some of these NBA players who are actually know their shit about wine are making it here. Instead of making it in places, I know plenty of NBA players who are making it in obvious locations, and man, would I like to call them out, I'm not going to. But this is a fascinating place to do it for a ton of reasons. And those ones are the ones who actually know wine, that are doing it in a place like this instead of doing it in a place that I won't name.
Yeah, I love getting phone calls from, because I mean, really that's what the podcast is about. It's the way it was kind of started, was not only to bring pretension out of the wine, but also to highlight these hidden gems that you can go find. Now that you've heard their name, you're like, ooh, how do I find them now? And
now I know Wild Sun Wine is going to be sold at Walmart.
Yeah. It is going to be sold out within the next 2 or 3 weeks because everybody's going to hit the website.
We're going to have to chop down their house, but we'll do it.
I know. We're going to have to set a case aside for us peons that, once they make it huge. Yeah, I love it. This is
the trick. For these wineries, these little guys, they how do you reach a balance of being profitable in wine? Mm-hmm. Only thing harder is being profitable in documentaries, and it's a slim margin. But I would say that it's so hard to figure out how to keep your integrity, make what you want to, and also not burn yourself out and be like, I just want to rip the union out and, walk into a river. Yeah. So I think there's so much opportunity up here right now that I hope people still get a chance to make stuff on the smaller level and learn as they're going. Because you can't do that in a lot of places. You just can't. If you want to be a winemaker in Napa, go to UC Davis. Make connections and work really hard, because the only way you're going to do it is that way. You could conceivably, if you knew people, still go the old way here. I'm not saying you don't need to be classically trained. I'm just saying there are ways to make wine in a place that is incredibly suited to make wine here that you can't do in many other regions. Yeah.
No, I agree.
Maybe the Finger Lakes, maybe there you could do it. Maybe I don't know if anybody wants to go back to Ohio and make wine in the islands, but you could probably do it there easily.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a good place to make wine.
Oh, it's certainly a good place to go get drunk. I've done it. Anyways.
Again, on the list.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get out of your hair here in just a minute, but
no problem. I feel like I've taken us off topic 47 times. So
yeah, but that's kind of what this is about. I love it. Yeah, I love it because I'm learning something as you're talking. If you were to pick one wine region in the world that is interesting, that you would want to either revisit or you have not been there yet, where is that?
Oof, that's two very different questions. That I would want to revisit. Many wine regions I've been to many, many times. So I think that I think that we talked about Spain earlier, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, first of all, there's 50 places in Italy. I can tell you the answer is like there. I mean, I'm talking like, I have never been to Corsica. I'd like to go to Corsica. Love the rosé and Vermentino from there. Revisiting northwest Spain, Galicia, which is a very unexpectedly green, and Galicia means Gaelic. It's a very, very different place than you'd expect in Spain. It is an incredibly beautiful, wonderful place with great wines, very affordable. That's a place I would go 100 times out of 100. Incredible seafood. So maybe some of the best seafood in the world.
Well, you just said all the right things.
Oh, I mean, the octopus there is like nothing you've ever had.
Oh my God, that's okay.
I also think there are...
Guess who I'm calling next time I'm going on vacation? Yeah.
There's 10 islands in Greece. Santorini's an easy pick with a Sertico. Look, the tourist season is a tricky one, but if you can go there not, just sort of slightly off the tourist season, not only is it one of the most beautiful places in the world with history that's incredible. I mean, it's probably the basis for the lost city of Atlantis, that huge volcano that erupted around that time and destroyed the civilization. They think it's Atlantis. That's a place I would go to 1,000 times out of 1,000 because the wines are amazing, the views are incredible. Turkey, as much as anyone who's... Turkey is an incredibly gorgeous, historic place that makes some really good wines. It's a Muslim country, so it's tricky in the way that they do it, but you can navigate that. I think that also, God, you just wanted a simple answer, didn't you?
No, but I'm digging all of them. I'm taking like mental notes of where.
Morocco.
Ooh, yeah.
Is one that I would say go to. But on top of that, like I think that Mexico is like an incredibly underrated place for wine. Baja, Mexico, and some other regions there make. They've been doing wine since the 1500s. The conquistadors. Tough story there, but they planted Vitis vinifera, and it's amazing. Those regions are so fascinating. It's so fun, and the food is fantastic.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that.
Fantastic. I mean, truly, truly, truly great. I have never been. Japan has some interesting wine regions. They grow wine on Mount Fuji, and I'd like to go there and see that. They do Riesling and some other whites, and they're supposed to be delicious. The Japanese, when they do things, do it right.
Yeah.
Let me know when we stop.
I think that you've pretty much given us a bucket list that is going to probably reach me for the next century or more.
Fair.
Yeah. if I could travel all the time, it'd be a little bit different story. Yeah, but you know, I have my parameters.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to make sure that people know how to find SOMM TV.
Sure.
And then what should we be looking forward to on that's coming up?
Yeah, so SOMMTV.com. It's easy. You know,
it's really affordable. That is one thing I will say. Like, it's affordable.
Yeah.
As far as like something to like download, own, and pay like your annual. Like
we tried to make it would, for a year. It would cost a semi-decent bottle of wine.
Yeah.
$50 or whatever for a year. That was the goal. You know, it's tough. There's a lot of streaming services, so you're trying to make people know and care about it. It's the only way we're able to do what we do. But you know, on there you can find. We're the only people that have ever filmed a documentary about the Rothschild family, the banking family that makes the Rothschild and Mouton and all that stuff. There's an amazing documentary there about their story and their family history called in our vertical series and feed. And we have coming Life of Wine, which is that religion and wine and Vatican and Mount Vesuvius, Pompeii. It's a wild story. And then we have the Judgment of Paris thing coming. I have a thing about the rise and fall and then rise again of the Mondavi family in Napa. And then I've got a couple other wild projects that I'd be afraid to breathe them into the open.
Okay, let's keep those under wraps for now.
Yeah.
We don't want to jinx anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will also say that the, you told me because I should know that I've listened to several of the podcasts that were leading up to the release of the one about meat.
Oh, the whole animal.
Yeah. That was also very. I enjoyed that too.
Thank you. That was that one. I'm gonna plug my team here because they deserve it. That one won the James Beard Award, and it was a really special one because we worked. That film took 6.5, 7 years to make.
Yeah, it was
Everybody
really well
worked
done.
hard on it. It's
yeah.
That. Thank you for bringing up that film.
Yeah,
that's on SOMM TV and feature film about kind of how losing the profession of the butcher has changed our food. It's not, you know, it's a movie about why our food can be better and is better, and we're forgetting that. You know. Anyways, about meat.
Yeah.
Not a lot of films are about meat.
No,
People are afraid to talk about it.
I thought it was great. So, and maybe it's just because of my background or whatever, but I'm also super interested in food and now food and wine. So it just was,
Yeah, we filmed that movie in 8 countries. That's the other problem with SOMM. When people watch the SOMM TV stuff, this is a tiny crew that sometimes we go to 7 or 8 countries to complete one project. And it's very, 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 I wouldn't say smart.
Yeah.
From a financial standpoint to do it this way. But it also, we're trying to make it good, so hopefully people like it. If there's anybody in the service industry listening to this and you just simply can't afford it, message us on Instagram. I'll give it to you. I want people to be able to watch this stuff.
No, it's great. And I mean, everything I've named, it's not because I'm trying to, you know, impress you by what I've watched or what I haven't,
I don't know why you would try to impress me.
Or kiss your ass for that much many times, you know, whatever. They truly are really well done. They're educational. They're eye-opening in a lot of respects. And so, yeah, I think you're doing an amazing thing.
It means a lot.
Yeah,
it really does.
So, anything else you want to say before I say goodbye?
No, I appreciate you having me on. It really means a lot.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna head off to Club Aqua, where my friend built the back deck. I'm looking forward to it.
Perfect. Okay. I need to know all about this Club Aqua because I know nothing about. So, I don't know if I do want to know.
It's hard to get in. It's hard to get in.
But. Okay. It sounds like maybe I know a guy. I don't know. Anyhow, thanks, Jason. I appreciate your time. You guys really have a great time here in the Willamette, and as always, thanks to John. He kind of put this all together and kind of coordinated this. So I appreciate you both.
It's my pleasure.
Okay. Cheers, my friend.
Cheers.
To the next thing.
Yep.
Excellent.